number 35, Stephen Wagner, re-entering the game.
Well, I'll be damned.
Most likely.
All right, picture this. It's 1977. Your dad just packed you and your mom into the 71 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, and you're off to the drive-in for a double feature. You're in the back seat, and, it's getting dark, and you've already fallen asleep. I mean, you're only 1 year old, for heck's sake. I won't get into what your parents are doing up in that large front seat. So yeah, let's just not go there for now. Anyhow, Satan's Cheerleaders comes on the screen, and your dad has been looking forward to some straight up 70s exploitation, but it's 1977, so it's just exploitation. and he's also looking for some sleaze. Will Satan's Cheerleaders do it for him? Will it give him that punch of exploitation, of silliness, and of the good stuff, if you know what I mean? I don't know. Let's get into it and find out. I was lucky enough to meet the director of this film, Greydon Clark, at Whorehound Weekend in either 2009 or 2011. I can't remember. He was there doing a screening of his film, Without Warning. Without Warning, by the way, just a real quick, is awesome. It stars Cameron Mitchell, Jack Palance, and a very unhinged Martin Landau, and it's awesome. It's pretty much Predator. An alien comes to Earth to hunt its prey and, does all that fun stuff. Anyway, so if for those, sure that most of you have been to a horror convention before at a hotel. We shuffled into a conference hall. We sat in those crown-back banquet chairs, that aren't super comfortable, but we were there and we were happy. They wheeled in a not large enough TV, in my opinion, but we all wanted to watch the movie. It was great. But the best was yet to come, because Greydon Clark told us all about the film, shared some anecdotes from filming, answered any and all questions that anybody had about it. He even talked quite a bit about Satan's Cheerleaders. At that time, I hadn't heard of Clark or his films. However, I figured that with a name like Satan's Cheerleaders, I absolutely had to check that one out. Because like my dad so many years before, sounded like we have the 70s sleaze, the silliness, the blood, the gore, all this fun stuff. Anyway, like I said, we'll get there. But just so you know, as a side note here, Greydon Clark is not only the director of Satan's Cheerleaders, but he wrote it as well. And fun fact, the DP on this was Dean Cundy, and you know him from working with John Carpenter. Mostly, he was the DP on movies like Halloween 1 through 3, Escape from New York, and a bunch of other ones. Anyway, so in this movie, we have Yvonne DiCarlo as Emmy, John Carradine as the bum. By the way, is that the PC word for a homeless person? Is there a PC word for a homeless person? It also stars John Ireland as the sheriff, and Jack Crutchkin is the janitor. Now, if it were 1947, this would be a banging cast. Problem is it's 1977, and these guys are just a bit past their prime. However, they all put in good, if not slightly too serious performances. This is a straight up ridiculous exploitation flick, but they're giving it their all, and I love it. Thankfully, we also have another set of cast members, more on the nubile side. We have Carrie Sherman as Patty, Hillary Horan as Chris, Elisa Pal as Debbie, Sherry Marks as Sharon, and my favorite, Jacqueline Cole as Miss Johnson. Okay, so we open on a group of cheerleaders doing high school cheerleader things, engaging in silliness with rival schools' cheerleaders, kissing the boys, and showering in the locker room that, of course, has a spot where the pervy janitor can peek in on them. There's even an early scene with a beach football game. The football coach comes down to warn the dudes to not get injured, but also to save their bodily fluids so as to keep their energy up for the game. Brother, I do not want my coach talking about any of my bodily fluids, unless it was blood that I gave up for the love of the game. Anyway, there's even this most bizarre scene where the coach and dean of a college is tricked into going into the girls' locker room where they are showering. Bro, you thought the janitor was pervy? This dean was wild and anything but subtle. Anyway, this janitor is up to no good. It turns out he's actually a recruiter for the satanic cult located in the California mountains. It's his job to acquire quote-unquote virgin sacrifices for their rituals. Imagine bringing this guy in for a job interview and reading his resume. Janitor/satanic virgin acquisition specialist. I don't know. I would have questions, but I'm not sure if I would hire that dude. Anyways, one day the cheerleaders head off on a road trip with their coach. They're supposed to be traveling to some big away game to do their thing. But the movie is less interested in the cheerleading and more interested in them hanging out, chatting, generally being a bunch of extremely 1970s teenage girls. You know, feathered hair, tiny uniforms, the works. The coach is tagging along and trying very hard to look responsible while clearly being surrounded by absolute chaos. Anyways, on the road, they stop near this creepy old house that just happens to belong to a group of Satanists. The writing was on the wall, or on the mailbox as it were, but they just didn't notice. These cultists are led by a guy who looks exactly like the kind of dude who would run a low-budget satanic cult in a 1977 movie. His name is literally Sheriff B.L. Bub. For crap's sake, man. Gotta give you guys a hint. Anyway, cult has their own internal drama going on, arguments about power, rituals, sacrifice, the usual workplace disagreements you get when your organization worships the devil, of course. But naturally, the cheerleaders get kidnapped and dragged back to the house because the cult decides they'd make excellent sacrifices. The girls spend a lot of time tied up, yelling at each other, yelling at the cultists, and generally waiting for the plot to figure out what it wants to do. But here's the twist. One of the cheerleaders secretly has witchy powers of her own, which means that the Satanists accidentally kidnap someone who is very much capable of turning the tables on them. While the cult prepares their big dramatic ritual, she starts using her powers to mess with them, causing hilarious confusion, turning against them, turning against each other, and basically sabotaging the whole evil plan from the inside, and it's wonderful. Meanwhile, the coach and some other characters stumble around outside trying to figure out what happened to the girls, which mostly amounts to wandering around the woods looking concerned for, quite a bit of time. Eventually, everything erupts into chaos during the big ritual. The cultists start dropping like flies thanks to the witchy cheerleaders' powers, and the whole satanic plan falls apart. And the remaining good guys manage to escape the creepy house. So the movie ends with the cheerleaders surviving their run-in with the world's least organized satanic cult, but not only that, making their game and cheering their buns off for the team. But I'll tell you what, this is a tongue-in-cheek, silly, fun flick. It does get a little bit slow at times, and there's a massive lack of blood, satanic rituals, and boobies. There's a bit of each, and while they're there, they're great, but man, I was really hoping for like an onslaught of blood, boobs, and satanic rituals, but that's kind of what the movie's title promised, right? That's not to say that this wasn't a fun movie, because it was. However, it felt more like a comedic sex comedy or a teen exploitation flick than a real horror movie. We did have a satanic ritual, but instead of the devil's rain, we get a bunch of people in robes and a wooden goat head by a rock altar. Unfortunately, I think your dad up in the front seat will be a little bit disappointed in the lack of sleaze. And I'm not even going to say he might turn to your mom for entertainment, but nobody wants that. Okay, so I'm not even going to mention it. It's closer to The Invisible Maniac, albeit with way less nudity, than something like To the Devil a Daughter, also with way less nudity, but I'm not going to get to that either, like at all. I wish I didn't bring that up. Anyways, it did have some fun hijinks with the cheerleaders on their trip to the game, not only in what happens, but how they interact with others, how they interact with each other. It was fun. It's slightly naughty. They have the slightly naughty and silly kind of middle finger sense of humor, and it's entertaining. When they're trying to shock their teachers and the adults around them, a lot. That's a lot of why I really like this movie, is because the girls are fun. They do this and that, and they're just kind of teasing everyone. Like they are scared at points, but they still feel like they're kind of in control. But like I said, the tone is light and fun. The feel is perfect for that 70s drive-in vibe. There's even a bit of a Carrie vibe when we find out that Patty's actually a witch and starts using her powers to thwart the satanic cultists. There's a lot of 70s weirdness, straight up groping, very inappropriate adult behavior. See the Dean that I talked about above. And there is just a ton of weird leering. Okay, and there's also like passive sexism that you just can't get away with anymore, but it's kind of funny. But it's just kind of it's a time capsule, and obviously we've talked about movies like stuff that you could never make now, but are there, and they're kind of funny, just kind of as a relic of the past, I guess. Anyways, there are little instances of that kind of stuff all the way throughout the movie, so it does kind of, if you're enjoying it and you know what to expect, I think it's a pretty decent show to watch. Finally, we have to talk about the song One for All and All for One, performed by the band Sonoma. Man, it's not like it's bad, but by the end of the movie, you are tired of it. Every once in a while, a song gets associated with the film in such a way that it's almost like one can't exist without the other. For instance, we have Miserlou by Dick Dale in Pulp Fiction, the movie. Eye of the Tiger by Survivor in Rocky 3. Don't You Forget About Me by The Breakfast Club. By the Information Society in The Breakfast Club. And now we have this. The only problem is those are actually good tunes. This one, oh my gosh, I'm just tired. Anyway, like I said, decent movie, fun, light. It's a little too dirty for the kids, but not quite enough for those of us who would be watching 70s exploitation movies. But it's a lot of fun. If you look at this as a comedy, kind of a light-toned comedy, then I feel like you'll be prepared for this and what it's got. Anyway, that's all I got for this one. So appreciate you guys so much for hanging out and watching the video. Like I said, please like, subscribe, share it with your buddies. Just do that. It'd make me so happy. And yeah, that would just be wonderful. Visit corpsecollective.com to see what else is going on over there. And until next time, I'll catch you guys later.